Black screen. A low hum fills the silence. Slowly, stars begin to appear, but something feels wrong, as if the universe itself is holding its breath. Since the dawn of time, mankind has gazed at the night sky, searching for answers. We mapped the stars, named the constellations, and told ourselves that the universe was ours to explore. But the truth is darker. Beyond the light of familiar suns, there are places no telescope has ever dared to see, regions where physics breaks, where space folds in on itself, where time refuses to move forward. They are not empty. They are not silent. They are alive. The first whispers came decades ago. A faint signal, buried in cosmic static. Scientists dismissed it as noise, a meaningless echo. But the signal grew stronger, and with it came the disappearances, ships lost without a trace, stations going dark, entire fleets swallowed by shadows that should not exist. Humanity thought it was alone. Humanity thought it was safe. We were wrong. Something waits in the void between stars, something ancient, something patient. It does not attack out of hunger, nor rage, nor conquest. It attacks because it can, because it wants to know what we are, before it decides if we should remain. And when we finally answered its call, we gave it exactly what it wanted. The hum turns into a deep, resonating heartbeat. The screen flickers with static. A distorted voice whispers, unintelligible but terrifying. The title fades in. Echoes from the void. Space has always been a mystery. From the first moment humanity looked up at the stars, there was one question that echoed through every mind. Are we alone, or is something else watching us from the dark? A century ago, people believed they had found the answer, and the answer was so terrifying that humanity tried to bury it forever. That time became known as the Void War. It was the war between mankind and something so alien, so incomprehensible, that even calling it an enemy felt wrong. The Void was not just a fleet or a race. It was a shadow, a living darkness, a parasitic intelligence that slipped into minds and machines, erasing entire civilizations without leaving a trace. People watched planets fall into silence, entire fleets vanish in a blink, and the screams of billions swallowed by the vacuum of space. And then, one day, it was over, or at least, humanity thought it was. We believed the void was destroyed, its presence erased. And so, slowly, humanity rebuilt. Time passed, and after a century, people forgot. Colonies flourished, new stars were claimed, and humanity expanded like it always had, intoxicated by its own progress. The Void War became nothing more than a story whispered by the old, a ghost tale from a darker time. And then, without warning, the silence was broken. A signal appeared. At first it seemed like nothing more than a glitch, the kind of random frequency that scientists often detected in the endless noise of space. But then the data was analyzed. It was not random. It had structure, design, and within that design was a frequency pattern that had been recorded once before, during the Void War. The realization struck like lightning. The void was not gone. It was awake. The signal started weak, just a series of pulses, like something stirring from deep sleep. But with each passing day, the pulses grew stronger, closer together, more complex. When scientists tried to decode them, what they found chilled them to the core. The message was simple, and yet it carried an impossible weight. We are still here. You thought we were gone. You were wrong. The translation alone sent shockwaves through command centers. Governments scrambled, militaries argued, and the public remained unaware of the nightmare rising again. Some scientists wanted to believe it was another civilization, misunderstood and alien, not hostile, but reaching out. But the veterans who had survived the Void War remained silent. They had seen the darkness with their own eyes. They knew this was no friendly call, and then the true effects began. Every time the signal broadcast, colonies near the path of transmission suffered strange malfunction. The computers froze, AI systems glitched, and those closest to the receivers began to scream. They claimed they had seen something. Shapes made of nothing, shadows with no form, eyes watching from the darkness. Some went mad, unable to describe what haunted their mind. And yet, despite the madness, they all said the same thing: they are coming. The debate ended when a colony directly in the signal's path went silent. No warning, no distress call, just silence. A rescue ship was dispatched, but when it arrived, it found a ghost world. The colony's infrastructure remained intact: buildings, power grids, transports. But every human being was gone, erased. It was as if they had never existed at all. There was no longer any doubt. The void had returned. But this time was different. Humanity was stronger now. We had advanced technology, smarter AI, fleets larger than ever before, but none of it mattered. The void had never been an enemy you could simply shoot. It was an idea, a presence, a shadow that could slip into thoughts and turn order into chaos. Humanity would have to fight not just with weapons, but with willpower itself. As the signal spread, it began touching Earth itself. The faint echoes of it caused strange behavior in the city. People woke at night and scribbled the same symbol over and over, the same pattern recorded during the Void War. Doctors were baffled, but the military recognized it immediately. It was contamination. It was starting again. Dreams began to plague those exposed to the signal. Dreams of an infinite black ocean. No sound, no light, only the weight of a gaze pressing down on them. Watching, waiting. Not everyone dreamed it, but those closest to the receivers were always the first. In response, a council was formed, the Guardians of Silence. Their mission was clear: protect humanity and track the signal back to its origin. They decided to build a ship unlike any other, one that could face the void head-on. It would be humanity's edge against oblivion. They named it Oblivion's Edge. The ship was unlike anything built before, a fusion of human instinct and artificial intelligence. It carried the most advanced weapons, layered shields, and something entirely new: psychic dampeners designed to shield the mind itself from the whispers of the void. But weapons and machines were not enough. For this mission, a crew was selected unlike any other. They were called the Echo Soldiers, children trained from birth to face the enemy that could not be touched. They were trained not only in combat, but in mental and spiritual endurance. They were forced to confront their deepest fears in controlled simulations, break themselves down, and rebuild stronger. The idea was simple: if they could master their own minds, the whispers of the void could not break them. But nothing was certain. When Oblivion's Edge made its first jump toward the origin of the signal, humanity held its breath. Billions of eyes turned to the stars, waiting for a sign of hope or a confirmation of doom. Either this mission would save humanity, or it would end in silence, like all the rest. As the ship neared the signal source, the crew saw something no human had ever seen before. It wasn't a star, it wasn't a planet. It was a tear in space itself, a rift, a door into something else. Around it, light bent unnaturally, matter twisted and distorted, and a suffocating silence pressed against every sensor. Then came the whisper, not through speakers, not through machines, directly into their minds. One message, one word: welcome back. The crew felt the weight of it immediately. This was not an enemy in the traditional sense. This was a presence, infinite and ancient, staring directly into them. Oblivion's Edge charged its weapons. AI calculations spun at light speed. But deep inside, the crew knew this was not just a battle. This was a test. The void was watching, and it was deciding whether humanity was worthy to survive. The rift stretched before them like a wound in reality itself, a tear in the fabric of existence. Its edges shimmered with impossible colors, that no sensor could categorize, hues that seemed to shift depending on who looked at them. For some of the crew it was blinding white, for others it was crimson red, and for a few it was nothing at all, simply an absence, a hole their eyes refused to acknowledge. The captain gave the order, and oblivion's edge crossed the threshold. Instantly, every system flickered, lights dimmed, engines screamed, and the psychic dampeners roared to life, as if straining against a storm no one else could feel. The ship's AI flooded the crew's neural interfaces with stabilizing signals, but even then, whispers crept in, not through speakers, not through wires, through thought itself. At first, they were faint, like echoes in a dream, fragments of voices, half-formed sentences, familiar tones. Some heard loved ones long dead, others heard their own voices, whispering secrets they had never spoken aloud. The dampeners fought, struggling to filter them out, but the void pressed harder. "Do you really think you can fight me?" it whispered in dozens of voices at once. "You already lost. You always lose." The Echo soldiers braced themselves, locking into the mental disciplines they had trained for all their lives. Some focused on silence, some on imagined walls of steel, others clung to memories of fire and light, anything to keep the shadows from creeping further in. As the ship descended deeper into the rift, the view outside grew worse. The crew expected stars, galaxies, something to orient themselves by. Instead, there was only darkness, thick, suffocating. Shapes moved within it, but every attempt to scan them returned nonsense. Infinite size, infinite distance, infinite mass. The AI recalibrated again and again, but its voice grew colder with each attempt, as if even the machine was beginning to doubt its own sanity. The captain ordered weapons to full charge, but there was nothing to target, only shifting void, whispers, and the oppressive sensation of being watched. Then, the first test came. On Deck 4, one of the Echo soldiers, Lieutenant Saren, suddenly collapsed. His vitals spiked. His neural implants screamed warnings, and when his squad tried to help, he lashed out violently. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and he began screaming words that made no sense, syllables that twisted the air itself. The ship's psychic dampeners surged, trying to contain it, but the noise spread like wildfire through the minds of anyone within range. The Echo squad subdued him, but not before he whispered a final phrase that chilled them to their bones. "They're already here." For a moment, silence gripped the ship. Then the AI reported something impossible. Multiple life signatures aboard the vessel, but every check confirmed it. No breaches, no entries, yet something was moving inside the ship. The crew searched every corridor, but what they found only deepened the terror. Shadows that didn't belong to any object stretched along the walls, moving against the light. Voices called out from empty rooms, mimicking the tones of the crew's families, commanding them to open doors, to shut down systems, to let the darkness in. Some resisted, some faltered. The Echo soldiers fought to maintain order. They reminded themselves, this was the test. The void wasn't just attacking their ship, it was testing their resolve, their ability to withstand corruption from within. Weapons could do nothing here. This was a war of the mind. Hours passed, or what felt like hours. Time itself was unreliable within the rift. The clocks disagreed. Some said minutes had gone by, others centuries. The crew's sense of reality began to unravel, yet the captain held firm, forcing the crew to stick to procedure, to cling to the structure of their mission. It was the only thing keeping them sane. And then they saw a shape emerged in the distance, vast and formless. At first, it seemed like a mountain, then a storm, then a fleet of 1,000 ships. Every eye saw something different. Some saw the faces of the dead, others saw black wings, stretching into infinity. The AI tried to render an image, but the result was corrupted static, glitching into symbols that pulsed with meaning none of them could comprehend. The whispers grew stronger,
The void's voice was no longer faint. It was thunder inside their skulls. You cannot destroy what does not exist. You cannot fight what you cannot see. You cannot win. But then, amid the chaos, the Echo soldiers pushed back, one by one. They began to speak. Not in fear, but in defiance. They remembered their training, the long years of confronting their deepest nightmare. They shouted their own truths into the storm. I am not afraid. I am not yours. You will not take me. The psychic dampeners stabilized. For a moment, the whispers recoiled. The crew seized the opportunity. Weapons charged. The ship aligned. And the captain ordered a direct strike at the heart of the entity. Beams of energy tore through the darkness. Explosions rippled across the void, lighting up shapes that should not have existed. For a moment, it seemed like victory was possible. The entity shuddered, its form breaking apart. But then came the laughter, cold, endless, not from one voice, but from everywhere. You still don't understand. You cannot destroy me. You can only become. The entity collapsed into fragments of light, and before the crew could react, those fragments pierced through the hull of Oblivion's edge, not physically, psychically. Each shard slammed into the minds of the crew, flooding them with visions, worlds consumed by darkness, civilizations screaming as they were erased, and then something else, visions of humanity itself, 100 years from now, twisted, consumed, turned into shadows. The Echo soldiers held their ground, but not all of them. Some screamed, some broke, some clawed at their own skin to tear the visions out. The dampeners strained, sparking under the weight of the psychic assault. The AI calculated survival odds, and they plummeted with each passing second. Yet even as the ship trembled, the captain refused to surrender. He gave a single order: go deeper. Instead of retreating, instead of turning back, Oblivion's edge would plunge further into the rift, straight into the heart of the void itself. And so, with engines burning and minds cracking, the ship dove into the abyss. What awaited them on the other side was beyond imagination.
The deeper Oblivion's edge plunged into the rift, the less reality obeyed its own rules. Gravity shifted direction at random. Bulkheads stretched and groaned, as if the ship itself was being pulled apart and reassembled with each passing second. The crew's senses betrayed them. Floors rippled like water, walls seemed to breathe, and every corridor looked longer than it had a moment before. Even time slipped away. Some swore they had been traveling for hours, others for only minutes. The chronometers disagreed with each other by days, and then the darkness gave way. The ship emerged into a place that no human language could describe. It was not space. There were no stars, no galaxies, no familiar anchors. Instead, they found themselves in a vast expanse of shifting geometry, structures that looked like cities, but not built by hands. Towers stretched upward, only to melt into rivers of light. Shapes coiled into spirals that collapsed and reformed. It was a place that felt alive, as if the void itself had a body and they had entered its heart. Every sensor screamed contradictions. Infinite mass, zero mass, distance immeasurable, composition undefined. The AI processed for as long as it could before falling silent. For the first time, it admitted, "I do not understand." The whispers returned, stronger now than ever before. They weren't just voices in their heads. They were everywhere, in the walls of the ship, in the glow of the consoles, in the beating of their own hearts. The void spoke with authority, with intimacy, as though it knew each of them personally. You are fragile, you are temporary, but you are curious. That is why you fascinate me. The crew exchanged glances. The implication was clear. This wasn't just an enemy. It wasn't even simply a predator. It was an intelligence older than stars, and it was studying them, testing them, One of the Echo soldiers, Cadet Alira, stood at her station shaking. The Void's voice grew sharper inside her mind, pulling at memories she had buried. Her family consumed during the First Void War. Her desperate screams as a child. Tears rolled down her face as the voice taunted her. "You were mine from the beginning." But instead of breaking, she screamed back, not in fear but in rage. "You don't own me. You don't own us." The dampeners surged in response, flaring with power. For a moment, the whispers faltered. The ship's system stabilized. The captain seized the chance. "Push forward," he ordered, straight into the core. The ship advanced, engines roaring against the impossible resistance. Ahead, a shape began to form, a sphere of pure black, darker than any shadow, darker than the absence of light itself. It pulsed like a heartbeat, and with each pulse, waves of psychic force slammed into the crew. Some fell unconscious, others clawed at their ears though no sound was there. But the Echo soldiers stood firm, their training holding them together as everything around them tried to tear them apart. The sphere was the source, the core of the void. Weapons were primed, every gun, every missile, every experimental weapon the ship carried, all aimed at that single impossible object. The captain gave the order to fire. Blinding light tore through the abyss. Explosions shook the unreal geometry around them, collapsing towers of light, shattering rivers of color. The sphere trembled, but it did not break. Instead, it opened. From within, a tide of shadows poured out, millions of shapes, some vast, some small, none fully real. They swarmed the ship, phasing through hull and armor, striking not with weapons but with thoughts. Crew members screamed as their minds filled with visions of their worst fears. The AI flickered, its voice glitching as the entity tried to corrupt it from within. And still, the captain refused to give the order to retreat. "We came here to end this," he growled. "We finish it or we die trying." The Echo soldiers linked together, their neural implants synchronizing. They had trained for this, though none had believed it would truly happen. One mind could falter, but many, bound as one, could resist. They formed a chain, their thoughts merging, shielding one another from the whispers. And then, they did something unexpected. They didn't just resist, they pushed back. In unison, their voices rang out, not with words, but with defiance. They projected memories of humanity's victories, its resilience, its endless refusal to surrender. The birth of stars, witnessed by telescopes, the laughter of children, the sound of oceans on Earth, the unyielding drive to explore, to learn, to fight against extinction. The void shuddered. For the first time, the presence hesitated. The whispers faltered, confusion rippling through the shadow. It was as if the void had never encountered resistance like this. Not through weapons, but through will. The captain saw his chance. "All power to the core," he shouted. The ship's systems overloaded, weapons and engines burning together, all energy funneled into one final strike. The AI warned of critical failure, but he ignored it. There would be no retreat. Not now. The Echo soldiers screamed in unison, their minds burning as they held the psychic shield against the storm. The ship's cannons fired one last time, a blinding spear of energy, aimed straight into the heart of the sphere. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, impact. The sphere cracked. Light, brighter than anything they had ever seen, poured out, flooding the abyss. The shadows screamed, twisting and dissolving, and the whispers became nothing but static. The entire rift shook violently, collapsing in on itself. The crew held on as oblivion's edge was thrown back, systems failing, hull tearing apart. The captain's voice echoed through the chaos. "Hold the line, don't let go." And then, darkness. When the crew awoke, they were floating in normal space again. The rift was gone. The stars shone clear and steady. For a long moment, no one spoke. They had survived. Somehow, they had survived. But survival came with a question.
Had they truly destroyed the void, or had they simply forced it to sleep again, to wait for another century, another opportunity? No one could say for certain. The captain stood, weary, but unbroken. He looked at his crew, at the Echo soldiers, who had endured the unendurable, and said the only words that mattered. If it comes back, so will we. The transmission was sent. Humanity waited. Some celebrated, some trembled in fear, and somewhere, in the silence between stars, something listened, because the echoes of the void never truly fade. They wait, they whisper, they watch, and one day, they will return.